there are now studies that are showing that you might not have the urge to binge and you might not have the food noise, whatever that means, but you may also have a lot of lack of motivation in a lot of areas of your life. And this is something that you have to talk to your prescriber about, because it may be that you shouldn't be on it, or it may be that the dosage has to be adjusted. But my point is, you don't have to sacrifice joy in just to be thin, thinking that thin is the joy. It isn't the joy. It's just this body bag we walk around in so we can recognize each other. The soul and the essence of who you are, that's the important part. But, that I realize I'm standing on a soapbox when I say that.
Hi, Jenny.
Hello, my Nina.
It's just the two of us today, and I'm excited because this is a conversation we've been talking about a lot, and I'm excited to share it, which is, how do you walk into the realm of GLP-1s, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound, tirzepatide, all of those with your eyes wide open?
Right.
If you're listening to this and you've ever thought, maybe I want to do it, or you've already stepped in, stepped out, stepped back in, or are in fully, this is an important conversation to listen to, because we really want to break down this idea of making a full decision from your own wisdom. So
I think it's also important to say that, we're coming down pretty even-handedly on this, I think the thing that you and I have talked about so much is that, top of the list is always safety, and a close second is always body autonomy. And just to be clear, to the degree that one is able, everybody gets to make their own decisions, and they're never going to get judgments from us. I would hope not from the rest of the world either, regardless of whether.
Well, not only not judgment, we want to encourage you to be, this is my body, these are my choices. But to make those choices, we need information. And often we're living, especially in this era, in certain silos of information. So you may be getting from the medical establishment, the traditional medical establishment, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And you may be getting from your alternative healing wellness world, like, how could you? This is the worst thing you could possibly do. And we want to kind of bring both parts to the table so that we can really look at it. And I want to own my own bias that existed, because when GLP-1s first moved from being used for diabetes, which is where it started, into being used for weight loss, I was like, seriously? More weight loss drugs? More people telling us that our bodies are not good enough as they are.
Which, by the way, is still true. That is true, what you just said.
That is true. That is absolutely true. But I was really resistant. And I think it was my clients that really pulled me into this world of going, well, we're struggling. We want to try something, and I'm going to walk in. And so I've learned a lot over the last, 2-3 years that has really been full on about why it works for some and why it really doesn't work for others. So,
and when you say walk in, it's really just into the conversation about it. I want to give a lot of credit to something called sizeinclusivemedicine.org. I really encourage folks to visit that website. They have created a GLP-1 consent because, for all of the clients that I see that are on GLP-1s, no one's ever signed a consent, been discussed a consent of any kind. They may get, sort of a flippant conversation about, well, you might experience some constipation, or, if that, then this, and if that, just let us know through the portal. That's all they really hear. And then we can adjust, our dosages as needed. This is a very comprehensive GLP-1 consent. And, you might be thinking, well, sure. Well, if you looked at a consent when you go to surgery, you'd never let anybody do surgery on you. This is not one that scares people. This is, I think, very informational, and we're going to go through just a little bit of it today so that you get a taste of it. But I think it's an important resource to take a look at.
Where I'd like to start with is sort of the promise, right? When GLP-1s are presented to people, the promise is this will help, that you will lose weight, your health will improve. Now, and I'm not talking about the promise around diabetes and blood sugar stabilization, because that is actually what this drug was intended for. It was designed to stabilize A1Cs, to stabilize blood sugar, and that's important. But what I'm talking about is the promise around, when you lose weight, this will help you lose weight, and then the promise became, and it will keep you from thinking about food, right? It will erase food noise, which is something I really want us to get into because I have so many feelings about that. And so what else? What else is the promise that people are hearing?
Well, I mean, let's just talk about the promise you just talked about, because it's not just, you'll be able, the weight will just melt off, and by the way, you'll be better off because you lost weight. I mean, there's the promise that being in a thinner body is a better thing, that you will be more accepted, that you will be in better physical health. And I'm very cognizant of the fact that there are people listening here who are saying, yes, that's right. And actually it isn't, because you and I live in the world, in our work, of weight stigma. And there's a lot of definitions of weight stigma, but let's just make it a practical one, which is that we live in a world that believes strongly, ardently, without any proof, that thin is good, fat is bad, period, end of story. And again, I can't emphasize enough this idea of body autonomy. You can be whatever body size you want. And if you don't like your body size and you want to do something about it, that is certainly your right. No judgment here. But go in with your eyes open. Because how many diet fads have there been, and diet drugs in particular, that have been recalled, that have seen over a long period of time that they were very bad effect? We have to go slowly here. And again, it's just simply looking at what is this idea of food noise. To hear celebrities talk about it, it's the day of the locusts. Food noise is meant to be your body's way of telling you that you are actually hungry. But a person...
Wait, I want to slow you down because there's so much to say about food noise. So I'm going to put that in the parking lot for a second. I want to come back to weight stigma, because one of the things you just said is so important around, the promise that your life will be better. Everything will be better. And we can say, it's a promise, but the weight stigma is real. People are treated better when they're in a smaller body. That is thin privilege. That is the truth of how our culture runs. And it is heartbreaking. Right? It is sizeism. It's a kind of racism pointed at people's bodies that don't fit into a size 0 to 10. And then that's it. That's the only acceptable realm.
You're talking about marginalization. And not to go off topic, but I would feel irresponsible if I didn't say that there's a whole world of people that think, no. Body size isn't marginalizing, because when it comes to things like skin color or other things, you were just born that way and you can't help it, but this you can change. Well,
I hear my clients say that, but I did it. I lifted the fork, right? And that's where that external weight stigma gets internalized to be self-abusive and self-hatred.
Right, because as we've discussed in other episodes, right, there's so many things that go into what a body's size is meant to be, including genetics, including neurobiology. There's just so much that goes into it, right? But I know we want to stay focused here. The idea, though, is that you asked, what is the promise? The promise is that you will have a great life, that you will be thin, that you will be zaftig, you will be beautiful, you will be attractive. By the way, you'll get hired more easily. You'll date more easily. and you're just going to be this happy person, and you'll never have to think about it again because you're never going to have food noise again, and you're just going to just go through life without ever thinking about food again. And you know what? I'm sure there's some small percentage of people that are on these drugs who would say, yep, that's my experience. It's a teeny tiny percentage. For the others, it's more like, well, I'm sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Or it's also things like, yeah, I know it's not a really big deal to be injecting myself every week, but you know, I know what I'll do. I'll just do it for a period of time. And then when I get to the size I want to be, then I'm going to come off of it. Well, there's something that's in the consent, because you better be prepared to be on this literally for the rest of your life, or you will go through weight cycling. And that's more dangerous than anything, I think.
Okay, so let's stop at that, because that is important, and it reels back to what you said about this whole thing about the promise being you're going to stop. This is going to fix everything. You're going to just be able to do this, and end of story. But historically, all the other medications we've had leading up to this point have had weight loss, weight gain, weight loss, weight gain. And the research, this just came out last spring, is that weight cycling, going up and down in your weight, is more dangerous than sustaining being in a bigger body. That the stress of losing and gaining weight is really detrimental to your well-being. And so we have to wonder, and this is where it gets into, being on both sides of this GLP-1 conversation, is I'm hearing people say amazing things. It's really changing my life. I feel so great. But I'm also hearing people say, I don't want to be on this forever. I'm going to come off. Then they come off. Then the hunger comes back big time. Then the weight comes back big time. And now we're back into weight cycling. And we're back into the statistics of all intentional weight loss, which is 98% of people who go on intentional weight loss programs gain their weight back, if not more, in 2 to 5 years.
You have to say that again. 98%.
90%.
That has been the statistic for decades.
Yes.
You will
And this
not
is
only
long-term
gain back
research.
what you lost, but most likely more. And, you can say to yourself, no, that's not me. If you just get me into a smaller body, I'll know what to do. Because you know what? I really don't move my body, but then when I'm in a smaller body, then now I'm moving my body. So maybe not. Maybe your metabolism has become like a stretched out rubber band. Maybe it's just tired of going, becoming smaller and bigger and smaller and bigger and smaller and bigger. Hard to say, right?
And then on the other side, I hear clients saying, you know what? I'm totally fine with being on a GLP-1 for the rest of my life. I'm on blood pressure medication for the rest of my life. This is working for me. I am going to stick to this medication. Absolutely. And if that works for you, again, body autonomy.
I think we also have to name financial privilege here, though, because the other thing that can get in the way is that you might fit random medical criteria to be on this drug through your insurance because you have a certain BMI, and don't get me started on BMI, and then you magically reduce your BMI and become some other certain weight to height ratio, and insurance says, okay, that's enough. We don't have to pay for this anymore. And it's really an onerous cost. I know there was, at the time that we're recording this, I know that just in the last couple of weeks, it was approved that in certain cases, by certain criteria, that Medicare will pay for this. That's going to be a very short run. And it's also important to say that there's a pill form of this that is emerging and that's becoming available. That makes me more nervous than anything. Because you see, it's not likely that someone's going to abuse an injectable unless they have that tendency in their lives. But when you're taking it by pill form and you say, well, 1 was good, but 2 would be better, I'm waiting to see what happens with that. But I want to come back to this idea of cost. The pharmaceutical industry is making hundreds of billions with a B dollars on this. They're not going to lower the price anytime soon. And there are people getting it offline. They're getting it from other sources, some reliable, some not. I'm just putting that into the ether.
So I'm hearing, as I hear us talk, I can tell we're coming down deep into the side of like, uh-oh, right? Be mindful. And that's part of eyes wide open. And one of the questions, Jenny mentioned this consent form.
Yes.
That the
size inclusive
medical students, and they have 5 questions, and I'm going to sprinkle them through this conversation because they're so important. And they're questions to ask yourself before starting a GLP-1. And one you just spoke to, Jenny, which is, this is the 3rd question. Do I have a history of disordered eating that might be triggered by beginning this medication or by a loss of appetite? Right? This is that question that you just alluded to around, oh, if I have a pill, maybe I do more, right? I just spoke with someone yesterday and they said, once they were on it and was seeing weight loss, then they were like, oh, let me just up the dose. Let me just up the dose. And they said, I think I was really on too much. And I've seen this, not so much in clients, but with acquaintances and friends, is people really walking in to the doors of disordered eating and eating disorders.
Or walking back into the door. I think this brings up another issue, Nina, which is age. You and I work with clients all the time of all ages. I particularly have a lot of clients that are anywhere between 14 and 20. And, their parents and their physicians accurately get very, very alarmed when there's a precipitous weight loss, especially during that age. They don't get so alarmed when they're in a very large body. They get alarmed at just the weight gain. And I cannot tell you how many well-intentioned pediatricians and adolescent medicine specialists recommending that a 15 and 16-year-old go on a GLP-1. And again, if you think about everything we've talked about so far, if they didn't think they had disordered eating at that moment, well, boy, is that going to kick it in. And yes, I realize we said make your own choices, body autonomy. I think we should have clarified, not when your body hasn't fully developed yet. And so if you're 16 or 15, yes, I understand all the developmental challenges and the social challenges and all of that. And if I was just thinner, they would like me more. I get all of that. But to start this drug, unless you are diabetic, to start this drug at that age really just sets you into this world at an even earlier age of, oh, right, I get it. Thin is good, fat is bad. Got it. I'll keep that in mind for the next, 8 decades. Got it. Okay.
Right. And it's interesting because we keep coming back to this conversation. We're trying to get very specific about what are you walking into, right? The good, the bad, the ugly, the fantastic of GLP-1s. And where we keep ending up with is this societal perspective that it is better always to be in a small body. And the pressure that puts on women, and I know this is your experience and my experience of being of the clients in our own practices, of women saying, oh my gosh, I cannot believe the amount of time and energy I have spent in my life obsessing about my weight. And I literally, and I'm not exaggerating, not 1 ounce, have had clients say, I could have become a doctor, but I was too busy trying to get thin. I would have figured out how to feed an entire village in Africa, but I was too busy dieting, right? So we keep coming back to the bigger issue, which is that our whole culture is creating a war on bodies.
Yes, but I'll take the other side of that, which is that there are those who would say, well, yes, Nina, it's just for exactly that reason that I'm going on this drug, because I've wasted enough time thinking about it all the time, and now when I'm on this drug, I don't think about it at all. And
okay, yay, now we get to talk about food noise. Okay, right.
Let's
talk about it.
And that would be a lie, because that's not true.
That would be a lie. Definitely lying there.
You can think about this thing called food noise and say, oh my God, I hate when I have it. But guess what? When you don't have it, guess what you're thinking about? The fact that you think you don't have it and you're waiting for it to come back. Or will
Yes.
it come back? It's not like the conversation changes. That's
Well,
what my
it
clients
does, it
do.
changes slightly, right? People are like, I'm not thinking about like the chocolate is calling to me or the cookies are calling to me. But now I'm like, did I poop? Should I take those supplements? What about how much protein? Oh, have I lost enough? Should I stop? But what if I gain it back? And if I gain it back, what do people say? And how do I deal with people's like touching my body now and commenting on my body all the time? There's a whole other conversation, a very loud conversation that steps right into that space of the cookie's not talking to you. And my perspective from my experience is, so why were the cookies talking to you in the first place? Let's listen to that. That
Well,
isn't food noise. That's information.
it sure is. And part of that information might have been because they're really good.
Right.
And part of it might have been that's going to be an easier thing to do than to manage or think about some things that are going on in my life, past or present. And yes, listen, I want to say this out loud. I understand that if you are someone who has eaten emotionally, binged, are presently eating emotionally, binging in any way, and you hear like, oh my God, you mean I could just take this 6-second injection and then I won't have the same urges and I won't have to feel the shame? Who doesn't understand that? We get it. But there's work to do around it. You can't just put a stopper in. There's work to do around why has this been my obsession for decades? What are the societal reasons? What are the personal reasons? Or what are the traumatic reasons? What are the neurobiological reasons? What are the genetic reasons? And you might
But I
also,
think it's the take home, right? Which is, okay, if you choose, this is really going to help me, great. But it's not about then just shutting the door on the whole conversation about your relationship with your food and body. If anything, this is the time to open the conversation. This is the time to go deeper into, so what am I expecting of this body? What is the world expected of my body? And how have I tried to conform to that? And feel the grief of all the time we've spent. And feel the grief that we have to continue to manage our body such that we're acceptable. And I'm not diminishing, and I hear it all the time too, women who are like, I feel fantastic. I feel great. And I want to celebrate and make space for body joy. We don't do that enough in our culture either. But they
can't agree
exist.
enough.
The body grief and the body joy.
So let's body joy, Yahoo. Let me also talk about body grief for a minute in another way. There are men and women who have said, I really didn't want to participate in anything intimate or sexual because I just felt so disgusting. And, I don't think my partner wanted to be with me either. And now that I'm in this, smaller body, guess what? I have no interest whatsoever in anything intimate or sexual, and it's confounding. Well, there could be 700 reasons why, right? But let's just look at this, which is that there are now studies that are showing that you might not have the urge to binge, and you might not have the food noise, whatever that means, but you may also have a lot of lack of motivation in a lot of areas of your life. And this is something that you have to talk to your prescriber about, because it may be that you shouldn't be on it, or it may be that the dosage has to be adjusted. But my point is, you don't have to sacrifice joy just to be thin, thinking that thin is the joy. It isn't the joy. It's just this body bag we walk around in so we can recognize each other. The soul and the essence of who you are, that's the important part. But, that I realize I'm standing on a soapbox when I say that.
But there's something about what you're saying around that dulling of desire. And there's amazing results in that, right? People are taking GLP-1s and feeling like they have less desire for addictive behavior, alcohol, shopping, drugs. But there's a part of that spectrum continues to, and I'm less interested in sex, and I'm less interested in being with the people I love. And I'm less interested in sort of a deep, meaningful, yummy connection with nature and humans because I'm not feeling it. I'm literally not feeling it. And clinically, we talk about that as anhedonia. It's a symptom of depression. It's when we don't feel pleasure. And that's a concerning path that's coming up in the research of people's experience of GLP-1s.
And equally, again, on the other side of that, are people that would say, since I have now been able to get into a smaller body, whatever that means, I can play with my children more easily. I can play with my grandchildren more easily. I can, move my body more easily. So I think what we're really getting at here is balance. And we're getting at not feeling the pressure to make this decision, that you're making it in an informed way. Which brings us back to this wonderful consent form that comes from sizeinclusivemedicine.org. You mentioned one of the items, Nina.
Let me get into some of the others.
Yeah.
So one of them, the first question is, do I have any health conditions that should be addressed more directly rather than with a trial of weight loss? Are there screenings or preventative care measures that are being deferred for a trial of weight loss? I think this is so important because it's basically saying, is there a doctor saying, just lose weight and this will get better? Which happens a lot.
Well, you and I have talked extensively about the fact that there are people whose health has been completely and utterly neglected, either because they didn't seek out medical care because they were ashamed of their bodies, or because they walked into a medical setting in a larger body, and there were a lot of assumptions and presumptions made that if they were in that larger body, that was the cause of things, and they didn't have to look for other causes. And in not looking for those other causes, some people had severe and undetected illnesses. It's part of a larger, I'm going to say, to be kind, unintended weight stigma that exists within the medical field. So you have to go in with your eyes wide open and say, okay, why am I really doing this? And is it going to mask anything? Or is it going to reveal anything? And is there, by the way, a medical reason I shouldn't be on these at all? Those are the kinds of questions I'd be walking in with.
And if this resonates with you, please listen to our podcast with Dr. Asher, because they really spoke to the weight stigma and the issues within the medical establishment. So the second question to ask yourself before starting GLP-1s is, do I feel that short? What about if it results in weight cycling?
So again, weight cycling to me is the most onerous part of this entire thing. It really is. As you said, there are so many studies to show being in a larger body is not a health risk. Going up and down from small to large to large to small to large is a health risk. The body doesn't react to it well. You might say, well, okay, but if I go on this drug, isn't that going to end the weight cycling? Well, maybe, maybe not, because for reasons we've already discussed, there may be a lot of reasons why you need to or wish to come off the drug, or whether they be financial, medical, or because of side effects. And so then you will weight cycle. It's not a matter of that you're a bad person. It's not a matter of discipline. It's the nature of the drug. When you come off of it, get ready because you're going to put weight back. And so it's really, am I willing to step into that risk? Yeah.
Yeah. And, and I'll say for myself personally, am I willing to also step into a long-term relationship with a medication, right? If you're going to go into it and you don't want to be in that weight cycling, are you willing to do that? I tend to be very reticent about medications in general, any medication. That's just me. And so that informs all my decisions about medications that I should be on. But that's where my brain comes from. But I think it's worth looking at, what is my relationship? Am I willing to be in the long haul for this? Because that's the kind of medication it is.
You're talking again about informed consent, because if you or anyone else went to what you considered to be trusted medical professionals who said, here's a drug, whatever that drug might be, that really would, protect you, would give you long-term benefits, right? You would still be, I hope, having discerning conversations about what are the possible side effects? What are the chances if I do take it? What are the chances if I don't? Where am I likely to be better off? Where am I doing my research about that? Often that's not what happens. Often a doctor says, I think you should be on this, and you say, great, I'll pick up the prescription in an hour. We're talking about consent. To me, that's the bigger conversation here.
It is. It's so important because I'm choosing this and I'm having a conversation versus I saw it on social media or my friend is on it or I'm seeing everybody get thin. So I want to be on it. And I can tell you from talking to many, many women who are on these medications, everybody's experience is totally different. So you're going to have your experience. And what we want is for you to walk into whatever choice you make, choosing on your terms. So
I always like, before we do that, I always like to remind people of the survey that's often done in which people list the 3 things they are most afraid of, because this is just, to me, the whole story.
No, it's terrifying.
Number 1 is always speaking, to a large group of people. Number 2 is being in a fat body. Number 3 is death. You want to understand, death is 3. Okay?
Isn't that crazy?
And number 2 of the thing to be most afraid of in the entire universe is being in a large body. And that is, an outgrowth of our society and misinformation and stigma. That's just it's where we sit. So I say this because there are women who have said, and men, I must say, who have said, yeah, you know what? If I have to live with, some cramps and constipation and maybe even dry mouth and all that, that's worth it to be thin. Not giving attention to what happens when the body does not clear itself completely, when the colon is not cleansed the way it should be. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But the idea is that I'm willing
interesting research that hasn't happened yet.
That's right. I'm willing to completely have side effects that I don't like, and that I'm willing to live with them at the idea that I will be thin. And that's to me a very sad thing. Yeah.
Well, I'm willing to be in discomfort in my physical body to feel better about myself emotionally. It's an interesting, how much discomfort, what discomfort are we willing to tolerate? Nobody can tell you what the right kind of discomfort. Being in a human body is going to be an uncomfortable experience. That's the reality of being a human being. And so people are sort of choosing what kind of discomfort do they want. Okay, before we end, I want to go through the last 2 questions because the third one was, do you have a history of disordered eating? And 4 and 5, I'm going to combine them. If I were to set weight aside, what would make the biggest difference in my health? Am I pursuing that as well? And the 5th question, do I need help caring for myself in the body I have now? What professionals or community could I access for help? Right? And what I love about those questions is it widens the conversation from weight loss to how can I support myself? How can I nourish my whole being? And how do I put myself in environments that support me to do that?
Mm-hmm. And that's not only medical, right? That's maybe it's therapeutic. Maybe it's just, friends and communities of people that are moving their bodies, and I'd like to move my body more, so maybe I can do that with them. Or maybe it's things like, gee, am I having my teeth checked as often as I should? Am I having my skin checked as often as I could or should?
But it's also the groups that you have for women. It's the body peace groups that I have for women, right? Are you in environments that help you think about your whole being, your whole well-being?
Yes. We're asking people to take on a very big task here, Nina, which is to really make their own decisions based on what they really want and not what they think the world wants them to be. Now, I promise you there are folks that are listening to us now that are saying, yeah, I know exactly who I want to be, and I'm very happy about it. Thank you very much. And I've now become who I want to be. No. What happened is your body got smaller. Who you are is who you've always been, and I hope that's glorious. But if you're better able to access who you think you are simply because you're in a smaller body, I encourage you to just remain curious about that. That's the point here. I want to emphasize again, top of the list is body autonomy to the degree that you have that you make your own decisions about who you want to be, what you want to do in your life to the degree that you can. We all have obstacles in our way for lots of different things, but not that it be because society said I'm supposed to look a certain way, I'm supposed to be a certain way, and that's going to make me a better person.
Yeah. And that these
really
decisions, whatever decision you choose to make, it's not just a physical decision, right? It's an emotional journey also. It's a bigger information gathering for your whole being, not just an A1C conversation. And
Yes,
so give yourself support around that.
Yes, and I would say this is an evolving conversation. We're going to learn more and more and more. And I hope we learn good things, right? But also going to learn that this still reinforces weight stigma. It still reinforces the way, the world thinks. But maybe we're also going to learn that maybe the anecdotal things we're hearing now about some anti-inflammatory processes or, some, less urges to have alcohol, maybe those are going to be a nice side effect. I remind everyone that how we came up with, hair growth medicine, minoxidil, I think it's called for men, was that it was a blood pressure medication. And guess what? While they were taking blood pressure medication, they were growing hair. Somebody said, oh my God. Okay, well, guess what? This was a diabetic medication, and some people were losing weight. So someone said, oh my God, there's a race to the billions. So we have to go at this slowly and carefully and be very conscious of our expectations. And it is evolving, and I hope it'll evolve fairly and slowly so that we can make informed decisions.
Yeah, and you don't have to do it alone, right? You can get support around it. What I'm finding in my communities is women gathering, and we're doing groups around people who are on GLP-1s and trying to navigate the complexity of it, right? It deserves support. You deserve support, whether you're choosing a GLP-1, whether it's the last thing in the world you want to do, whether you're tiptoeing. This relationship with our body is worth getting support with. It is a complex relationship, and it impacts everything about your life.
Final thing that I want to say, Nina, to everyone is whatever you do in your life, whether it's about this or not about this, whatever decisions you make, see if you can do them without shame. There's no need for shame here. Shame is what makes people do this. Shame is what makes people do it and not talk about it. Just be who you be, make your decisions, live with them, change them if they need to be changed, but let the shame go. That's my little advice for the day.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Nina.
Thank
Thanks,
you, everybody.